Alrighty, so we're going to kick it off with Kahoot. We've got a very fantastic guest lecture today for you about the trans-theoretical model, do some group activity work, and if we have some time, some answers to some questions that come up. So take it away, Dr. Best, with our Kahoots. If future Dr. Best is here.
Yes, I'm here. 1 second.
By the way, everyone, I called Janae future Dr. Best, and some people have described liking calling her that. She doesn't require it. So just to let you know, when you email her, you don't have to call her future Dr. Best. I think it's a sign of respect, but she doesn't necessarily need that. Just throwing that out there.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. I appreciate it. All right, here we go, team. All right, so we have the pin on the screen. It is 525367.
So just in case folks aren't seeing what's happening, if it takes time to load, then the game has to reload every time. So try as best as you can to get in and with the pin loaded so we can get rolling.
Yeah, I think also what's happening too is that the number keeps going down. So it was like 56 at one point, and then it went down to 51. So I think it might be kicking people out if people's Wi-Fi is spotty. So that might be another issue. So then it takes a long time to load because people are like leaving, and then some people are coming back. So yeah, like how Dr. Anderson said, if possible, try your best to type in the game pin as soon as the pin pops up on the screen. I wish they had a way to auto start, but I don't think they do. So I just have to sort of wait. Okay, cool. 2, 1. All right, what is a major strength of the stages of change model? It is generalizable to different behaviors. It can predict a person's behavior very well. It allows people to track their progress. It has proven to have good internal and external validity. Music's making me nervous a little bit, y'all, too. So what you guys need now? Okay. So the key part there is that like sort of generalizability is sort of like a hallmark for most theories. And so like a key part of the state of the change model is that it is generalizable. to different health behaviors. Although it is sequential, the stages of change model allows a person to revert to previous stages. True or false? Okay, yay. Good job. Why is it a big deal if the stages of change model has always been ineffective and biased? It has been a waste of time. It is expensive to study. It has influenced major healthcare policy. It influences or has influenced major healthcare policy. Okay, I typed the same answer twice accidentally.
So on this one then, Janae, sorry.
Yeah.
If we got that one right on the orange one and it's the same answer, does it count?
That's a good question. I will fix that so it does count.
Yeah.
Common critiques of the trans-theoretical model include integrity of the stages. It is focused on individual cognitive processes, the accuracy of its trans-theoreticality, and all of the above. Okay, good job, guys. Yasmin, I'm making a note to fix that question now when I
Thank you.
total the scores. A limitation of the stages of change theory is that it has a linear view of behavior. True or false? The stages defined by the trans-theoretical model are suitable to describe how people process and make changes in their lives. True, the stages are reliable. False, the stages are too discrete to describe how people think and work. Okay. Which of the following is not a stage of change defined by the trans-theoretical model? Pre-contemplation, reaction, action, and maintenance. Seconds. Okay, pretty good considering. Let's see. Okay. Shout out to you three. All right.
All right. Well, great work all. Looks like we have a few things that we can address, but all in all, great work. All right. I see that Haley is here, so I will introduce Haley. So 1 second on that. Oh, Zoom, sometimes you're so challenging. 1 second. All righty. Thank you so much. Janae. All right, so I'm super excited to introduce Haley to you. This is a quick note before I do her, well, I'll do her introduction first and then I'll tell you my quick memory of Haley. So Haley, as you all got a chance to meet Arteria Rogers a few weeks ago, Mr. Rogers. So he was a part of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation program, Culture of Health Leaders. He was a part of the second cohort. Haley and I were a part of the first. So we're really, I'm super excited to have her here with you today. And I'll read you what Haley says about herself. Haley says, I'm passionate about working with people who use drugs in Arizona. My state is slowly moving forward and finding innovative solutions to address the suffering that Arizonans, who knew, who use drugs experience due to criminalization, stigma, and dehumanization. But in the meantime, we still have preventable tragedies coursing through the state, such as overdose fatalities, hepatitis C infection, child removal, and compounding mental illness. As the director of Sonoran Prevention Works, I'm embracing the concept of harm reduction to meet state policymakers and change leaders where they are to challenge stigma in a way that makes sense to their cultural and political orientations. I'm building a culture where people who use drugs are safe to be who they are and have their best chance to achieve their goals, whatever that looks like. More about Haley. Haley is a proud Arizonan, a former drug user, and a bulldog. I will do whatever it takes in order to continue building a community that advocates for the dignity and rights of people who use drugs. I'm in it for the long haul and can't imagine doing anything else. So that's what Haley has to say about herself. A few quick memories about Haley. Haley was the first person I met in the program. I don't know if she remembers that, but we were getting our food and we were putting it on plates. And I was like, she looks super cool. She's got tattoos and like super curly hair. I want to be her friend. So we started talking and found out that we were in the same program. She was one of the youngest folks in our cohort. So again, we're thinking about Robert Wood Johnson, which is a great organization that you all should look into given your health interest. But the youngest member of our cohort, the first cohort. So really when she says she's a bulldog, she means it. It is my privilege and honor to welcome Haley to the class today. So hi, Haley Coles.
Hi. Oh my gosh, I wrote that stuff like
you did.
4 years ago.
I know. Yep.
So little embarrassing. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Anderson, for having me here. It's nice to be with all of you. I have done guest lectures before, but certainly never on Zoom. So I'm sure I'm going to have some technological issues. Apologize in advance. Yeah, and I'm going to talk to you all about the stages of change and harm reduction. So I don't know, anything that I need to know or that I should do before I put my slides on?
I'm just making sure that we can get you to share it. So I'm going to make you co-host. That should give you access. Yeah. Let me know if it doesn't work.
All right, I'm technology.
It's great. It's a wonderful thing. What can I talk you through? Anything? Oh, you got it. Look at you. Yes. Okay, bye.
Can you see that?
Sure can.
Okay, and you can't see the other crap on my screen.
No other crap, just the Sonoran Prevention Works.
Great, love it. Okay, then I'm going to jump in and Rihanna, if I'm like talking too long, just let me know. Okay, so I am going to talk to you all about reducing harm with the stages of change. As Dr. Anderson so kindly introduced me, this is me. I'm the Executive Director of Sonoran Prevention Works. We are a statewide harm reduction organization working all throughout Arizona to make change from the micro to the macro to benefit people who use drugs and people who are impacted by the war on drugs. And these are the loves of my life. This is Beulah. She's a pit bull. This is Beans. He's a brat, and yeah, they make me very happy, and they're both really happy that I'm home all the time. Yeah, I think as Dr. Anderson stated, I come to this work honestly. I do not yet have a master's degree, but really found myself doing this work because I didn't have resources that should have been available to me in Arizona when I was experiencing chaotic injection drug use. And then found out like, oh, in many other parts of the country and the world, people who use drugs are treated with a little bit more dignity and are able to access some very basic health interventions. So I have been practicing harm reduction since 2006 when I used bleach to clean out a syringe that somebody else had used before I was going to use it. And it's really been the center stone of my work since 2010. Mostly in Arizona. I did spend some time in Tacoma, Washington, working at a syringe service program there. But, so this is just the mission of our organization, centering harm reduction in Arizona through participant-driven advocacy, education, and outreach. Like I said, we do work from the micro to the macro. So we start with outreach and peer support. We conduct trainings and provide technical assistance to organizations who work with people who use drugs. And then we do both legislative and local advocacy work. Currently in Arizona, it is a felony to operate a syringe service program. So we do it anyways, but we have worked for the past 3 years in a row at the legislature to try and get that changed, to no avail. So normally at this part of my presentation, I like ask you guys questions, but I don't know, is that like not a thing that can happen on
Haley,
Zoom?
you totally can. These are the most responsive students on the planet. Go for it.
Okay, great. So who knows what harm reduction is? And if you know it, come off mute and tell us what it is, or put it in the chat. And it's totally fine if nobody's familiar with it.
So harm reduction is the process of making something like substance use less harmful to individuals. So a great example of that, as you said, is with distributing clean syringes to people that you know are going to use drugs regardless. And so making that step of using like a dirty syringe where you might spread disease, taking that out of the equation by making clean syringes more accessible. So it doesn't necessarily stop that behavior, but it makes that behavior a lot safer.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good example of harm reduction and kind of pivotal. Somebody in the chat said harm reduction is meeting people where they are and guiding them through safer processes. Yeah, exactly. Meeting people where they are. Yeah, and that's kind of like the tagline of harm reduction is meeting people where they're at. And I like to add on not where we think they should be. Because as we're going to talk about, it's really about internal motivation to change. So yeah, harm reduction is a theory. It's a set of strategies, principles aimed at reducing some of the negative consequences associated with drug use. So it doesn't condemn or condone drug use. It just accepts it as a part of our world. Substance use has always been a part of the human condition. It always will be, and that's that. And what we can do is we can try and minimize some of the harms that come from it. Some of those harms, yes, are directly related to the substance itself, but really the majority of harms that come from substance use are from how we treat people who use drugs, from the laws that surround substance use and the people who use them. So harm reduction doesn't ignore the real and at times tragic harm and dangers that are associated with drug use, but it works to elicit positive change. So abstinence, some people think that abstinence and harm reduction are completely different things and that they oppose each other. And that's not the case at all. Harm reduction is this approach where, you know, we ask the person, what do you want? How can I help you get there? If it's abstinence that you want and you're struggling to get there, let's keep you safe until we can get you there. If you're ready for it right now, like, we'll take you to that treatment center, we'll help you accomplish what you want to accomplish. So it's really about centering the client's needs and desires. The chat bubble just came up and then it disappeared.
It's me just saying great answers. Yeah, don't worry.
Great. Okay, so what are some of the harms that people who use drugs experience? Call it out.
There's risk of infection and reusing needles or sharing needles with people, and there's social stigma associated, which prevents people from being able to access clean resources.
Exactly. So preventable physical illness.
There's actual physical chance of like overdose or death.
Yep. Overdose fatality, trauma of surviving an overdose, risk of being arrested, forced withdrawal. Yeah, these are all really good answers. Isolation, love that one. And I think that's the first one I've got here. Incarceration, HIV, hepatitis C, surveillance, child removal, housing insecurity, and fear are just a few of them. And these are all pretty bad. So people should probably just not use drugs, right? That's a nice idea, I suppose. And as I'm sure Dr. Anderson has drilled into all of your heads, laws don't equal morals. Social constructs exist, even though they may not serve people, especially those who are harmed by them. So it's important to talk about how we got to the point where people who use drugs are put in positions to experience all of these harms, because doing drugs on its own does not equal getting your kids taken away from you, right? Like, that is a social process. So, and violence. Okay, so I would argue that stigma is really the #1 killer of people who use drugs and of people who are associated with drugs. It's a set of powerful negative beliefs that a group or society holds about a topic or a group of people. Language really influences stigma a lot. And so I love this quote: words matter. If you want to care for something, you call it a flower. If you want to kill something, you call it a weed. And stigma really justifies prejudice, rejection, avoidance, discrimination against people who are part of this socially undesirable class or who engage in this undesirable behavior. And so that then is the lens through which we view people who use drugs. And it's really important to talk about how drug laws have evolved in the US. The very first drug law in the US was in 1875 in San Francisco, and it banned the smoking of opium. Before that and after that, heroin was totally legal. It was bought in pharmacies. Oops. Okay, here we go. It was bought in pharmacies. It was used for all kinds of medical purposes. So was cocaine. And it was this anti-opium law was made to target Chinese Americans and Chinese immigrants because it was more common for them to smoke opium rather than get it in whatever form it came in the pharmacy. And so opium was not banned. It was just the smoking of opium. So it was like a very thin veil to begin criminalizing or continue criminalizing Chinese Americans and Chinese immigrants. And as we've seen with nearly every single drug law since, it has always targeted communities of color. So now there is more attention to harm reduction and overdose prevention. And I'm sure this isn't the first time you've heard that, like, more people are paying attention to it because it was a bunch of white kids who were dying. And yeah, that's true. Also now, if we look at race, it's people of color who are continuing to be disproportionately impacted by overdose. But anyways, people experience harms from substance use because of the stigma, because of criminalization, because they are driven underground. And that criminalization has been motivated by white supremacy. So this data comes from SAMHSA. And oh, there's some stuff happening in the chat. Sorry, guys. I really thought I was competent.
It's really just me saying great stuff. Like, it's, don't even worry about it. It's typically just me, or I'll say something if I find it, for sure.
Okay, great. Okay, so in 2015, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health found that 19.3 million Americans with substance use disorder did not receive treatment. And only this tiny little sliver of them thought that they needed treatment. So a lot of times when we talk about substance use and like, what can we do to help people who struggle with substance use disorder? What can we do to end overdose? A lot of the answers are, we need more treatment. We need to help people get into treatment facilities. We need culturally competent treatment. We need treatment in rural areas. And yes, all of those are true because there is still not enough treatment for folks. But faced with this information that the vast majority of people with a substance use disorder who didn't get treatment aren't going to go seek it out because they don't think it's going to help, that really begs the question of, what do we do? Like, how do we help people? How do we not only keep them alive until they can achieve some kind of stability, but like, we need to not attach this end goal of abstinence. So again, harm reduction is meeting people where they're at, not where we think they should be. And maybe that person never wants to be abstinent. Maybe they never can be abstinent. And they deserve to live and thrive and be there for their family members and feel some purpose. So that's where the stages of change come in and are very, very useful. So stages of change, or the trans theoretical model. I know that you all have read a bit about it, have some familiarity with it, so I know that this isn't going to be anything new for you. But I think what's important to understand about the stages of change is that it's not cyclical. So you don't start with pre-contemplation and then go to contemplation and then go to preparation. Sometimes that happens, but oftentimes people skip around on this. And this is really, really important. So obviously my field is substance use, so that's the example I'm going to give, but this can really be used for anything. So if somebody experiences an overdose and we reverse their overdose and we wake them up, what should we do? Like, what are we going to talk to them about?
Having Narcaned someone back into consciousness, they usually wake up really, really angry. So you're probably not going to talk to them about much of anything of substance.
That
this
can
is
happen.
one of the really difficult things in emergency medicine. Sorry, I'm a dual MD. Like, when people come in an overdose situation, it's really, really hard to have some of these conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you threw them into full withdrawal out of an overdose.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. So I'll just use this example. If I was getting high, I was at home, I was relaxing on my couch, I'm feeling really good, I close my eyes, and then I wake up and there's like cops surrounding me, yelling at me. I just urinated on myself and I feel like I got hit by a truck. I'm not going to be very nice. So that is not everybody's experience, but as we're going to continue talking about, like, so much of readiness for change is dependent on external circumstances. It's dependent on how we're treated. So yes, that is important to keep in mind, that the person might not be very happy when they wake up. And so maybe we give them a little bit of space. But let's say that we've given them that space and they're alert and they're willing to talk. What do we talk to them about?
Would you talk to them kind of just maybe about like maybe like how they feel or like how they got there, some like the informational stuff, because I'm sure it can be pretty it's like fearful or emotional of just like how did I get here, who called, am I in trouble, all this type of stuff. So like you can't really talk about the health aspect of it when they have like all these other thoughts like racing around, like am I going to be arrested, like family members, I don't know, they like, are they going to find out it's like a child going to be taken away or anything like that. So maybe that.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I'm reading the chat. I love your guys' responses. I usually give this presentation to like behavioral health professionals who run treatment centers, and they're like, well, you just got to take them to treatment. So I really love that your first instinct is like, let's just see how they're feeling. Like, let's just ask them how they're feeling. And that is so important. And with the stages of change, like it really matters where they are. So if that person had been maintaining abstinence for a period of time, and this was like the first or second time that they'd used since they had been abstinent, maybe that's when we start asking them questions about, you know, well, what do you want? That's how we assess where they're at on the stages of change. And if they say like, man, I had been abstinent for a year and I don't know how I got back here and I want to be abstinent again, like that person is back to preparation. So they just went straight from relapse to preparation. And that's when we talk about like, okay, what kind of treatment has worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Are you willing to go now? But if that person is in pre-contemplation and they're like, I was just hanging out with my friends, I do Coke every now and then, the Coke was laced with fentanyl, I don't know what happened. I don't have a substance use problem. Then we offer them Narcan. We talk to them about safer use. We offer them fentanyl test strips. So in all of these different places where a person is, like that is going to inform how we talk to them, A, what we offer them, and B, where we want to help them move along in this cycle. And maybe they don't want to move, and that's fine. That's totally fine. Like they deserve to survive and thrive anyways. So readiness for change does not exist in a vacuum. I had a lot of fun putting this one together, guys. But I think that those of us who have a lot of experience in behavioral health, that's kind of how we think about it. Maybe we view it through the lens of 12-step or through traditional substance use disorder treatment, and we're not looking at all of these external factors. So I'm sure you all are familiar with the biopsychosocial model, and this is so incredibly vital in understanding where somebody is in their readiness and their willingness to change, and what kind of harms they may be facing. So is anybody familiar with drug set setting? This is a piece of the biopsychosocial model, or really is informed by the biopsychosocial model. Okay, the chat, sorry, I'm going to get back to the chat later on. But drug set setting really helps us view the whole picture that somebody may be experiencing and their benefits and their risks from using drugs. So when we talk about the drug, we're looking at what is the actual drug, what's the dose, the potency, the frequency, the type. Then we look at the set, which is the person. So what is their motivation? What's their relationship to the drug? What's their physiology, their unique characteristics, their ideas and beliefs? And then what's the setting or the environment? So their support system, their culture, their social dynamic. So depending on what all of these look like, it's really going to change somebody's experience. So here's an example. So this person's name is Kate. She takes Adderall. She takes Adderall pills. She takes 15 milligrams every 2 hours, which is a pretty high dose. The set is that she uses during exams. She's a 26-year-old Chinese American woman. She prioritizes school. She does really well in school, and she's afraid of meth, like has never done illegal drugs, never would. The setting is that she's in grad school and she lives with her twin brother. Okay, so like think about some of the benefits, like she's taking Adderall because it's helping with her exams. She doesn't seem to have other major issues. Maybe this isn't an issue. Yes, she's taking it a little more than she should be, or a lot more than she should be, but this is fairly typical. And then we look at Manny. So Manny injects meth every 2 hours, and essentially, y'all, meth and Adderall are like the same thing. So he uses to stay awake. He's 33 years old. He's gay. He's Latino. He's homeless. He has chronic depression. And the setting is that he uses in public because he doesn't have a home to use in. And he's been disowned by his religious family. So basically, Manny and Kate are doing the same thing. They're taking it in different ways. Oops. They've got different motivations. They've got different settings. Do you think Kate is likely to be stopped by police when she's walking around and thrown in jail? Probably not. But is Manny likely to be arrested when he's walking around trying to live his life? Maybe has a syringe on him because he doesn't have anywhere else to put it. And so his motivation for change may be very different from Kate's. Kate might actually not have any motivation to change because things might be fine for her. Whereas for Manny, like, things are really unmanageable and he has more motivation, but he also has a lot less support. It's going to be a lot more difficult for him to sustain those changes. The idea of, you know, I've been using for so long, what am I going to do without it? And I don't have family to support me, is going to be really different from Kate, who, if she does decide she wants to change, like, she lives with her twin brother. She's in school. She's got a lot of support. So those things are also super, super important when thinking about the stages of change. So to close, we often think of substance use as a spectrum. So from chaotic drug use to abstinence, from harm reduction to recovery. But in reality, this is what it looks like. There are so many different points at which we can intervene, and they're all so wrapped up and dependent on each other. So we have to see all of that complication, all of that, how dynamic people's lives are, and how the world treats them and views them, to understand where people are in wanting to make that change, and how we can meaningfully help them make a change. So just a couple pieces of the trans theoretical model in application. Stay curious, ask people, don't assume. And I saw you all say that when I asked, what would you do when somebody wakes up from an overdose? You all said, we would ask them how they're feeling. Offer harm reduction resources, utilize motivational interviewing. Decisional balance boxes are a really, really nice tool to help somebody understand their internal motivation, and celebrate any positive change. You know, harm reduction just creates this buffet of options for people where it's not just you're using or you're not. You know, maybe you used 3 times yesterday and you used 2 times today. That's awesome. Or you injected yesterday and today you didn't. You took it orally. So you're not at risk for the kinds of infections that you might be with injecting. Change doesn't happen overnight. It is really difficult. So we want to celebrate anytime somebody's able to make positive change as they define it. And that's it. So I don't know if there's time.
Oh yeah, we totally have time. I know
for questions or thoughts.
Yes, Haley. So just to let you know, to catch up in the chat, both Holly and Adrian recognize how important that image was. And even when we get to the theory part of what we're going to be talking about today, folks are going to be seeing the very classic, like, theoretical, you're in this box, then you go to this box, and then you go to this box. So Haley, maybe you can talk a bit about what we discuss a lot in this class, which is, what are some of the challenges in knowing about theory? And then why should we still know about this theory, even if it doesn't end up looking like that in the real world?
Yeah. I do think it's, so I'm going to sort of answer your question here. I think it's really, really important when we are working with patients, clients, participants, to have folks available who have lived experience, who can relate. Like, it is not cool that public health interventions are created for drug users by people who have never used drugs. Like, it should be very informed by people who use drugs. So, the fact that harm reductionists, people who use drugs, have really embraced the stages of change, I think that's important. I think, there are so many theories that we can utilize. And I'm just like a huge fan of assessing with the person, like, where are you? Like, where are you at right now? What's your mindset? What do you think is possible for you? Especially if we don't know them well, like, we are going to turn them off if we tell them what they need. That's generally not going to work. Maybe we find out after we've known them for a little while, like, oh, they really like that direction. They really like somebody holding them accountable in that way, and that's fine. But like, that should never be the way that we try and build rapport with somebody. And I think, like, yeah, we never know what somebody's experience is. We never know what somebody's thought process is. We never know what kind of trauma they've experienced, what kind of life they've lived. And we need to be curious. We need to help them understand what their motivation might be. And that can inform, I think, then what theory we use moving forward. I don't know if that answers that.
Of course it did. That was great. All right, looking for 3 folks who have Haley questions. TTM, Haley specifically, go for it. Three folk.
Hi, Haley. My name is Yasmina. Thank you for coming virtually today and presenting. I'm curious about grief and loss. So I used to work at a residential substance abuse treatment center for women only, and we focused on doing quality improvement projects based on grief and loss. And we found that there was a lack of those projects within substance abuse treatment centers. And so do you feel that there's a bigger place for grief and loss therapy groups? Because, as you may know, people who have done substance abuse usage sorry, that was worded really weird, may grieve not only family members while having used drugs or substances, also grieve the loss of their substances. Does that make sense? So do you think there's a bigger place for that? And then should we be focusing more on that as well as a part of treatment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We used to offer grief groups at treatment centers. And also, like, nobody in my organization is a behavioral health professional. So we are all like either public health people, former drug users, current drug users. So we are lay people, we are peers, but we facilitated some grief groups in treatment centers. And it was mostly, I'm not sure that we were necessarily equipped to help people through the grief of losing that lifestyle, or losing that friend that they may have had in their substance. But absolutely, we talked about the grief of losing people to overdose. With how many people die of overdose and drug-related harms, like, I think that it's really hard to find anybody who hasn't had to grieve the death of somebody that was taken too soon and that was taken in a way that was really preventable. So I do think, and also, it's really traumatic to survive an overdose. It's really traumatic to revive somebody from an overdose, especially if you're a lay person. So I do think that there needs to be more space for those conversations. And what I've seen a lot, because unfortunately so much of treatment is informed by 12-step, and 12-step like totally works for some people, and that's great, but it's not evidence-based and it doesn't work for a lot of people. And so what I hear a lot in treatment settings is like, some of us have to die so that others can live, or it's like, if those are the choices that person made, and that's that's just bullshit. And we should be able to grieve for people who have died, especially when it was preventable, and overdoses are preventable.
Thank you.
We've got Natalie in the chat who indicated that they just want to thank you for your talk. They worked with women experiencing homelessness this past year and meeting them where they were. AT was a huge framework that they tried to work within. In terms of providing assistance, it's cool to look back and see how they implemented areas of the stages of change model in their interactions before they really knew what this, that model was. So awesome to hear that, Natalie. All right, we need one more person who's going to talk to Haley. These are not scary. Oh, go. Yes, I hear it.
Yeah. Go. Hi, Haley, my name is Lauren. I did my internship with a harm reduction program in the county that I live in. And one of the things that, my mentor had talked to me about was ways that like public health professionals, so people who have like gone to school for public health, kind of interact with people who are generally in harm reduction, which, as you said, are typically people who have either previously been drug users or are. And so how, I guess my question is, how would you say like to best approach that kind of interaction where I'm coming, you know, if I'm coming from a place of having all this background and maybe would have a tendency to, you know, kind of use a lot of like public health terminology and information if I'm like trying to coordinate with somebody who is coming from that place of previously being using drugs or not having that public health background.
That's a good question. I mean, especially if you've worked, you know, you've done your internships in harm reduction and like you kind of know the landscape, you know, the general pieces that people need, like what can be offered, you understand the stages of change. I think just in general, I mean, really, I don't think that my answer is specific to harm reduction people. I think it's just like about cultural humility. Like, don't speak in a language that people can't understand. And so if you've got that public health background and you start talking about epidemiology and whatever the hell, like that's not gonna make sense to people who aren't in that field. So I would just, I don't know. I'm a big fan of just like listening and hearing what kind of language people use and trying to repeat that back because then we know that we're like not saying things that they may not understand. I don't know if that really answers your question.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome, Haley. Any other quick questions, thoughts, comments, concerns? Taz, yes. Many
sorry.
people.
If I could just ask a quick question, Haley. So my name is Jackson. I'm working for Dr. Beck's Behavioral Health Workforce Research Center right now, and I'm specifically working on their study, just finishing up a literature review on the role of peer support professionals or like harm reductionists. And I know you had said that there's like more people who have those lived experiences in the care. Since we're looking at their specific role or defining what that role would be, I was just wondering what your thoughts would be on if we're looking at their like specific role or run like the whole facility or combination of clinical care and peers or just that kind of thing.
You cut out a little bit, but I think you were asking about the role of peer support in treatment settings. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's a lot of really great evidence around peer support, and the piece of 12-step that has been really effective is that peer support piece. So I think that peer support should absolutely be utilized in every setting. Because especially when you're coming off of drugs or you're coming out of a chaotic environment, and you've got some psychologist or MD using their language and like you don't understand what the hell they're talking about, you know that they probably have never been where you've been before. They have probably never felt what you're feeling. It's really important to have somebody there leveling with you who can say like, I've been through something like this before, like I'm here to talk. I think the really dangerous thing about peer support that I've seen is that I don't think that peer support training is good enough. I really don't think that there's much cultural humility training built into it. What I see a lot is that people who have come out of chaotic substance use may think that their method is the only method that works or the best method. And so if the person that they're working with isn't a fan of that method, there can be some issues. So I think, you know, the role of peer support is to say, I have been where you've been, or I've been somewhere similar. I hear your feelings, and to just like ask the questions, like, what do you want? What's going to work for you? Even if I had a really horrible experience with methadone, like, I shouldn't be putting that on the person. I don't need to tell that person that I had a horrible experience with methadone. I tell them everything I know about methadone, set them up to talk with a doctor, you know? So I think that peer support can really insert themselves in inappropriate ways. And that's the thing that they need to be cautious about. But otherwise, I think peer support is really, really vital.
Okay, unfortunately, we do have to keep it rolling, but Haley, a million thanks. I know that the students were super enthused, so let's give a virtual or come off mute clap, or in the chat clap. Let Haley know that you are thankful for their time. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. It was really nice to present to all of you and hear your questions and see your thoughts in the chat. I can't even get through all of this, but Dr. Anderson, please share my contact info. If anybody wants to chat, I'm totally more than happy to talk. Yeah, thanks. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much, Haley. Take care. All right, so I'm always excited when folks can bring the work to life. So I'm very happy that so many of you have really amazing questions, and it's great to hear your own experience. Like, I know that we don't have the best format for it, but hearing what you all are working on and what you used to do is just so amazing. So please feel free to insert that at any time. Alrighty, so for the rest of class today, what I wanted to do was ensure that we had those fundamental building blocks of what Haley was saying in mind. So I knew that Haley was going to do a more practice-based approach. So just to make sure that we've got the theory stamped out, I'm just going to go through this very quickly for the things that I don't think we're hit on quite a bit. So what we know is that, generally speaking, when we're looking at studies of where people are in their willingness or ability to change, we know that folks who are at the later or more advanced stages of that change, like contemplation or preparation, are more likely to be successful integrating those changes into their lifestyle. So just briefly about the trans-theoretical model, we know that each stage is its own construct. So again, as we're talking about these concepts and what we need to do to look into them, each of these is its own construct. Sometimes, as again, the theory puts it, there's a linear progression, but again, I think Haley brought it to life and lets us know that sometimes we skip stages, sometimes there's a web, and I really also enjoyed that visual as well. But again, from a theoretical perspective, there's a linear progression, and that there are different barriers that folks face at different stages. So if you were able to do the reading, you saw that there were these 5 stages of change, that again, in theory, behavioral change occurs in a certain direction, that it would go from pre-contemplation all the way to maintenance in this nice, tidy image that we know in the real world doesn't really map on. But again, from a theoretical perspective, this is what it would look like. There are various processes that are mapped onto these stages, and here are a few of them. So in thinking about how I can go from one stage to the next, some of these are going to be more evident in certain stages. I don't know, let me check real quick. So yeah, this just is where you might find some of these processes within given stages. So to get from pre-contemplation to contemplation, for example, that's where you might want to raise consciousness or have dramatic relief, etc. So it's not that each of these processes are occurring at each stage, but this is the theoretical supposition of where you would find some of these processes occurring to get you from one stage to the other. And again, I'm going to be speeding through some of this just to make sure that you see it, but a lot of this is just what would have been covered in the text. All right, so it is almost 2, and I want to make sure that you have a bit of time for our activity today. So what I'm going to do is, there are literally like 30 slides, so I'm just trying to see what's going to be the best. I'm going to start with this pre-contemplation example, just so we go into one of them, and then I'll make sure that I share my slides today so that you have access to the other subsequent constructs. So pre-contemplation is when a person has no intention of changing the behavior in the foreseeable future. This might be a person who's unaware that they have a problem. And I apologize, I'm trying to change all of my language to they and them language, so I apologize for having his and her still there. But may be unaware of their problem, may see no reason for changing, and lacks motivation to change. These are some of the characteristics that someone would be if they're in the pre-contemplation stage. Drug use or things like cigarettes, might be substance use as well, are things that are common examples that you'll find for the trans-theoretical model, because it's something that has a lot of evidence supporting it, which is also why I was asking Haley to go this week. So an example here is that Don Draper is an ad exec who manages to smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, but doesn't want to quit. Don says, I know smoking is bad, but I'm only hurting myself. If I didn't smoke, I'd probably drink more to alleviate the stress from my job and personal life. And everyone else in my office smokes. There's no way to escape it. So in the language that you're seeing with Don, there's very little talk about change, a desire to change, an awareness that they even need to change. It's pretty set within the behaviors that Don is engaging in, and that language is really free of movement on this model. So the goal then in this case would be to get them to think about changing their behavior. This, again, when you're thinking about the specific processes that you can do to get someone from one stage to the next, in this case, you would raise consciousness, provide information about the problem. So an explicit example, Don was saying, it's only me, it's not hurting anyone else. Their psychoeducation around what happens with secondhand smoke, things of that sort, might be really important to raise consciousness and awareness. You might also encourage expression of feelings about the problem and solutions, show how the behavior may affect others around them, again, with psychoeducation. Show the pros of changing outweighing the cons. So sometimes people will build a complete mountain of unachievable, consequences and barriers that get them across. But if you can start making the pros of changing, or even the steps to changing, bigger than that mountain, then they may see it as achievable. And then we can identify things that motivate them and build on these. So Haley said it beautifully. We often, especially if we're trying to do something very hard and we're not able to do it, we see ourselves as failures. We build a complete narrative around not being able to do it. But anything that you can say to motivate behavior, you're doing a great job. That was a great first attempt. That was a great thought. Any positives that you can focus in and zoom in on are things that are going to help to move someone from this pre-contemplation stage to contemplation. So I'm going to pause there because, again, there are 5 stages that we can use this example for, but I want to make sure that we're spending some time in our small groups today. And I think pre-contemplation is honestly going to be one of the best stages to have gone in depth on. Are there questions that I can address about the TTM or stage of change model that you read that would be helpful before we do something engaging with these stages? Are there certain stages that would be helpful to explore? Any parts of the theory that would be helpful to go into? Okay, I'm going to get you all geared up then for the activity. So, and feel free to ask the question if you have it. I'm also, again, going to make sure that you have those slides today in case you want to go through them before we meet again on Wednesday, but it's examples like we just did of pre-contemplation to contemplation for each of the stages. So there's something that I think would be really helpful to go through with our group activity sheet. So let me pull this up. All right. So we're thinking about mask wearing, and this is again where bringing up some current events I think is really useful. So since we've last met, the person who holds the office of president in the United States has been diagnosed with COVID-19. This was someone who talked quite a bit about not wearing masks and demonstrated behaviors of not wearing masks to folks that are supporters. So I bring that up because you all have been really interested in this idea of the politicization of mask wearing. And I think we're at a really unique and interesting point in this class where this is a shift to me. Like I'm not, maybe I'm wrong about this, but to me, this idea that we are watching the political divide potentially have some fallibility to it, whether it's completely, you know, broken down because of what happened, I can't say. But in my opinion, there has to be some sort of shift that's going to happen as a result of what just occurred on Wednesday with respect to the political structure that's already kind of set up. Yes, Alex. Yeah, even like as we've been in the class, there have been notifications on CNN about who's contracted it within the White House. So I mention that because if you click on the document for our activities today, I was going to focus a lot more on an activity. So we're at week 6, class 1. There's a expert response to the trans-theoretical model and COVID-19. I'm gonna say that the author references this idea of tiny habits. The habit of putting a mask on during COVID-19 has not been added yet to that tiny habits. It's kind of like a video. So how would you get people to put on a mask using the TTM essentially is the goal of tiny habits. So how do we build up from pre-contemplation all the way to the end of the TTM to get people to engage in a behavior? So they haven't done one for mask wearing. So the goal by the end of this week was for you to work with a group to put on a mask. I'm going to add a bonus to that. So I don't think that you'll be able to read both the expert response and this article, but where it says bonus, here's a WAPO article with language that will absolutely help to identify language in, or I'll put behaviors in various stages. So I added that link there because there are people who still have certain beliefs around whether they're going to wear a mask or not, even with the president contracting it. So folks who were a part of the party or who believe that this person is still right in not wearing a mask. It's just the language there. It was like TTM just in my face. Like, I'm not going to change, or like it's a hoax. Like, it's all in there. So I want you to have access to both of those articles. But the goal for you and your group today is really just to identify language or behaviors that would let me know who people are in each construct of the TTM with respect to mask wearing. So again, from pre-contemplation, today we saw Don Draper, who's talking about, well, it doesn't bother other people, right? It's just me if I'm smoking. I think that we hear that a lot for people who are not wearing masks. Like, it's not going to bother other people. I'm the one who, you know, can't breathe when I have it on. So I want to be able to breathe. You're hearing a lot of pre-contemplation language with respect to people not wearing masks. And again, that article from the Washington Post is just chock full of it. So what I'm going to do is break you all off into your groups. Today, the goal is not to get people to change at all. I don't want you to think about change behavior yet. We're going to do some intervention work on Wednesday with moving behavior. Today, I just want you to identify what is some of the language, what are some of the behaviors that you might see of people who are going anywhere from pre-contemplation all the way to the end of TTM, okay? Are there questions about what it is I'm asking you to do just for today? So again, I don't want you to change behavior. I don't want you to figure out any interventions. We'll deal with that on Wednesday. We'll create this tiny habits kind of like stepping stone of how do we get people to move from their behaviors. Today, I just want you and your group to start with pre-contemplation, talk about what it would look like for people who are at the pre-contemplation stage with respect to mask wearing all the way up and through the end, all right? So I'm gonna break folks out. We'll bring you back at about 2:15. It shouldn't take long at all to have this discussion, but just try to have maybe one person write this down. You'll be meeting with your same group on Wednesday, so you definitely want this written down for your group. So identify someone as the person who can write it down. All right, I'm gonna break you out. If you need me, just call me into your room. Bye. Okay, so folks are not in a room. Did I mess up?
I didn't get a breakout room.
Huh. All right.
Yeah, me either.
It looks like, okay, it looks like 14 for whatever reason didn't have folks. So let me just throw.
Oh, here it is.
That was weird. Alex, did you get one?
No, I haven't been invited yet.
Okay, I don't see you. Can you check one more time? Because I don't even see a way to.
Yeah, I don't think it would let me do things.
Oh, it says that you're in one. It says that you haven't joined. So it should have been.
Yeah, it just popped up.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Bye.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye. Janae, for whatever reason, I couldn't do the CSV. Thank you so much for making that. It wouldn't for whatever reason, it wasn't an option it was like a grayed out option.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. So I just did a manual, like 5 people super quick into that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Have you ever done an attachment? I know there's, oh, there it is. Never mind. I got it. Or, oh, hold on. There's like a way to attach. Oh, there it is. A file. Okay. Got it. I think it's just youth right now. Okay. So. I learned that we can add 120 seconds to the end of the breakout room.
Is there any way to get back to that room? I'm sorry. I accidentally
I did the same.
By the time I do it, it is, but by the time, let's see. What, do you remember what room you were in?
14.
All right. I think it would traditionally be possible. At this point, it's not letting me do anything like as the room is closing. So if that ever happens throughout the meeting, I think I can, but it doesn't seem like I can do that now.
Oh, it's okay. No worries. Thank you.
You all can talk to me and Dr. J.
I meant to like close, like, I don't even know.
I do it all the time.
To close the box, and instead I just
no worries
left.
No worries. How were your weekends?
My weekend was fabulous. I went to Detroit for the first time.
Welcome! Yay!
Really
what did you do, Erin?
We kind of just did a lot of like wandering around and exploring. Walked down Woodward Avenue. We went to the Detroit DIA. What is it? Detroit Institute of the Arts, and saw like the waterfront and all that. So it was kind of the perfect day, I think.
Oh, did you go Saturday or Sunday?
Saturday.
Which was a great day. Yeah, it was awesome. I live right by the water, so I don't know where about you were, but that's my hood. Yay.
Nice. Yeah, we were just like, we've been in Ann Arbor for, you know, over a month now, and we're like, we still haven't been to Detroit. We need to go.
I'm so happy that you made a trip. Not to say that you would ever want to see your professor, but if you ever do want to come and explore again, I've got some really great activities for you.
Yeah, good. We kind of did everything on our list for the first visit. We need second visit ideas now. So.
I'm on it. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. I'm super excited that you were able to meet with your group. I hope that was enough time. Let me get one person to tell me what, and as we're doing that, I'm going to send you all the file for the PDF of the article if you didn't get a chance to see it, because I forget that not everyone has a WAPO access. All right. So I need one person to tell me what pre-contemplation might look like.
I think the pre-contemplation, I looked at specifically the WAPO article. Mm-hmm. I just thought it was really interesting because there were a lot of quotes from people basically about how they had like no intention of changing any behavior because mm-hmm. they're like, okay, the president got it and he has the best medical team, he'll be fine. Yes. So, you know, if we're gonna get it, we're gonna get it, or we're not gonna get it. So there was no like, oh, we should wear more masks or we should wash our hands. So.
I'm telling you, I was in like reading that this weekend and I was just like, just mind blown about that. That is totally antithetical to what I would think you would say in that case. But you put it beautifully that's the thought is, well, heck, if he can get it, anybody can. So that is certainly a pre-contemplation example. Thank you for that. How about contemplation?
So I'm just going to jump in. When you're thinking about changing maybe just what you're reading off the news or what you're watching or what other people around you, like family or friends who might have gotten it, and whether or not like the severity of their condition. I know in the first article it mentioned that those who had family members who have a condition already were more likely to take preventative measures just because they know how to, prevent illness. So
awesome. Thank you. So taking some of the psychoeducation or their personal experience and giving a little more thought to what it would take to actually, for that to actually happen to them. So thanks so much for that, Simone. What about for preparation? What might that look like with respect to mask wearing?
So when I was doing the infographic, I remember reading a statistic that came out by the AMA that said, like, if 95% of people were to start wearing their masks, then we could avoid 100,000 more deaths by the end of the year. And it's like thinking about how many people have already died from COVID, which is like around 200,000 in the US. Like, you could prevent like half of that number by the end of the year. So I guess like encouraging.
Oh, Caitlin, I think you dropped out at the last second, your last sentence, but I would say, I would push to say that what Caitlin is offering is going to be more for the intervention piece of like how we can actually get folks to move. So an example that I will just give very quickly of what that might look like right now is my favorite term on earth, which is the chin strap. So someone who's wearing it under their neck and is like protecting all of their neck hairs from getting COVID, which is great. But like, what would it look like if we could just bring that puppy up to the nose? That would be someone who's preparing to do the right thing, but ain't quite there yet. I know folks need to drop off. So if you need to, by all means go. What would action look like right now? How do I know that someone is engaging in action with mask wearing?
Professor, can I ask a question about that really quick?
Yep.
In terms of like preparation, you could like, I know that like someone preparing to see like where they can get a mask, that would be like action, I feel. But would preparation, could someone like reading an article of like benefits of mask wearing be part of like preparation for them, or is that?
Yeah, I would say that would be more contemplation. That would be folks in the earlier stage. So I'm thinking about it. So preparing would be looking up exactly like where would I go to get one? How would I go about getting one? Is mine sufficient enough? Am I wearing it the right way? That would be more along the preparation lines.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And then action, spot on. Yep, you'd be wearing that puppy. Great. And then maintenance and relapse prevention. What might that look like?
Maybe.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Our group said for maintenance, it would just be like consistently wearing a mask and social distancing. And Jadrian, do you want to do preventing relapse?
I was just gonna say for maybe like relapse or something, maybe they're starting to forget their mask sometime, or they're maybe, just being like, hey, oh, I forgot my mask, I'll be okay. So you're kind of getting back used to not having that mask as much as you used to have it. So
spot on, Jadrian. It's me when I yesterday got a package delivered and came right in with my hands, opened it, started eating straight out of it. And I was like, girl, you don't have no clue what these people were doing with their hands or their mouth before that. Whereas in the past, I would carry Lysol with me, like meet the person at the door, spray them, spray myself, etc. So yes, beautiful points. Thank you all so much for that end. I know that we're at the end. So if you got to roll. What's one thing you learned today, how you're going to apply it to your life, and any questions you got for me?
I guess like one thing that I am curious about like exploring for the future of my life and everything is kind of going back to Jackson's and Yasmina's point during the presentation about peer support and trauma, and just seeing how like the resources and aid that can go for like family in those support systems that will either witness the overdose or like, I don't know, grieve from the overall overdose, or just like any type of traumatic experience.
Yeah, so Brandon, I'll drop Haley's contact information because I think Haley would be a much better person to answer that question in particular. But certainly Certainly. Excuse me. Woo. Certainly a great question. Sorry, a bit of carrot got stuck in my throat. Okay. Carly said that the review of harm reduction with health votes has indicated one thing that they learned is that the 12 steps isn't evidence-based, which definitely shook you, as will things like Scared Straight, when I tell you what that does to you as well. All right, so Brandon, I'm dropping Haley's organization in here. So please feel free to click on that. And I also have her email address if that would be helpful too, but that should get you in contact with people who can answer that question in particular. All right, I'll stay around for folks that have questions, comments, concerns. Have a fantastic day. You all are wonderful. Bye. Thank you, Tez.
Okay, so Dr. Anderson, back to my question about the Housing First initiatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was thinking, because I know a lot of shelters have like a requirement of being sober before you go in. And so I was, but then your comment made me think, so I was kind of thinking that Housing First initiative is developed for that reason, to address that. But it probably is a lot more than just the substance abuse issues, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So that's more so what I was thinking about. I thought you were thinking about it from a, like, some people don't believe that you should give, quote, handouts to people at all if they're not getting their own self together, right? So they don't want them to become dependent on those services. But you're absolutely right that one of the underlying issues there is that we're giving housing to people who don't insert whatever the issue is, right? So they don't have their own money, or they don't have their own resources, or they're doing whatever behavior it is that we don't want them to do, like use drugs. So you're right. That is a really big component of it, but it's also just this very paternalistic strategy that the US deals with, of like, we don't think people should have stuff if they're not working for it. That's the heart. That's, to me, the bigger takeaway from folks who don't want Housing First initiatives to go forth.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That really helps.
Yeah. No, so I think you're spot on that for substance abuse in particular. That's a perfect thought around it. But I think America just struggles with, if I can do it, why can't you? Why would I give you resources if you're not engaging in any of these elements, right? Yeah. So thanks so much, Jackson, as always. And hey there, Alex.
Hi, I was wondering if you could drop Haley's email. I had a family member who is dealing with the stuff she was talking about that sat in on her talk with me, and I think he really appreciated it, so I just wanted to let her know.
Fantastic. Haley always got the family. Love it. Love it, love it. Or not Haley, sorry. Alex. I'm looking at Haley's name. It's too hard to multitask.
Yeah, sometimes there's benefits to us not having private working spaces. He was like, oh, can I listen to this lecture with you? I was like, yeah, sit in with it.
All right, there we go. All right, so there that is. Jackson, I don't know if you wanted it to. Would that be helpful? Okay.
Yeah, if I could, I want to ask a few follow-up questions, just because I'm working on that study right now. So it was really, really interesting.
Perfect, perfect. All right, well, they should both be in the chat for you. Anything else, y'all?
Thank you.
You're welcome, Alex.
No, have a good day.
You too. Take care. Alex is frozen. Anything else, Jackson, that would be helpful? Okay. Thank you, and nope. Bye. All right, Janae, thanks so much for everything. I will see you on Wednesday.